Hello, and welcome to Conversations with Reverend G. I'm here every Monday night on WEMS Radio from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m., bringing you spiritual conversations. I am Reverend Grenetta Mason, Reverend G. And tonight, I'm bringing you conversations from a very, very special guest. And each week, my guests, they come from all walks of life. They have all different kinds of spiritual practices, and they share what's working in their lives in hope that you'll be inspired to use some of the tools that we talk about. I want to talk about spirituality in a practical way. How does it work in our everyday life? How can we use spiritual tools to support us through every day? And I talk about the spiritual toolkit. So, what practices do you have in your spiritual toolkit? And as you watch the show, I hope that you get to use some of the practices that the guests share with us. Because, my goal is to help you find joy and live your best life with grace and ease. And you can find me every day on Facebook as Reverend Grenetta Mason and on YouTube as Reverend Grenetta Mason and Instagram as Rev Grenetta. So follow me and get some great, great tools that can support you. Tonight, I have my special friend here, Barry Zahn. I have been friends with Barry for over 30 years. I actually met her in LifeSpring. It was a training that we did on personal and professional development. Fast forward 30 years, and I have a lot of people in Momentum on my show. Momentum is LifeSpring for me. So we did Momentum together 30 years ago, LifeSpring 30 years ago, and now we've experienced Momentum, and we talk about Momentum is a company that provides coaching, experiential workshops for personal and professional development. Barry is an attorney, and she is the principal and founder of the Zahn Law Group. She is also an advocate and just such a light when it comes to supporting people and the causes that she supports. She's 100% in. And I'm so delighted to have Barry on the show. Welcome, Barry.
Reverend G, it is so great to be here. Really, I'm just touched and moved and really honored to be here with you tonight.
Great. So introduce yourself to the people, Barry.
So, you gave me a great introduction. Usually people will tell you what they do or tell you who they are. And what I really like to say is I am love.
Yeah.
Who am I? I really am. And I know that sounds kind of corny, but really it's everything that I do and every way that I come from. That's really, where I like to come from. What I do, one of the many things that I do, as you said, is I'm an attorney. My background is cross-border tax. I help create extraordinary solutions for people, organizations, and companies. And I am very grateful that I had the opportunity about 3 years ago to start my own firm after practicing at global law firms for most of my entire career.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the many things.
You know what I love about that? Because you are love. And I wanted to describe.
Oh, look, I just noticed my cup. I didn't even realize that. Look, my cup says, I love you. I love you, G.
And I wanted to describe you in those ways because of how you show up for people and just who you've been over the years that I've known you. So you are love, and that shows up in everything that you do. So I really appreciate that you started with that, because those were like one of the would be the acronym, would be how I would describe you, as authentic, fun loving, right? Joyful, driven, the words that are ways of being, right?
Right.
And that's how I would describe you. So I know when you talked about, starting the law firm, can you talk a little bit about um, how you started your law firm for people who may be interested in starting a law firm? And I know you go from working for people, then eventually I know the journey of starting your own law firm. So can you give us a little bit how you got to now you have your own firm?
Sure. So I never, ever, ever wanted to start my own law firm. And I remember my father always wanting me to start up my own firm. And I would be like, Dad, why do you want to do that? Why would somebody really, want to have all of that stress? And but I guess about 3 years ago, what I realized after, like I said, after I clerked at the United States Tax Court, started my career working for a federal judge who was amazing, Judge Carolyn Millipar, and then went to big global firms my entire life. I'm very, was very grateful to have had the opportunity to work with some of the top attorneys in the world. But ultimately, I started realizing that the profession, in many ways, is very toxic and really dysfunctional, and that so many attorneys don't love what they do. And I always did. I love, as you said, I love helping people. I love finding solutions. I loved connecting with my clients on a deeper level. And I, it got to a point where I was, at that time, I was the managing partner of the largest Chinese owned and operated firm in New York. And I just felt like I really wanted to treat my clients the way that I wanted to be treated. And I just felt that that was not happening in an environment where somebody else was in control of what, kind of what occurred. And so I realized that I had to make a change. And the thought of really going back and working for somebody else, I felt broken. Like as I started thinking about it, I just started getting sad. And I just went, I can't do this. And so I don't know, I just kind of took a leap of faith. I definitely called, a lot of my clients and asked them that if I did jump, would they come with me? And and most of them said they would, or they expected to. And I didn't have a plan.
No plan. I was going to say, what?
There was no plan.
No plan, right? What would you say to a person that wanted to start their law firm? Because it sounds like you were able to, work and get to a point where you had connections, where you could call people and say, if I leave, will you come? So is that the suggestion? What would you
listen, I do think that's very important, right? Like you want to create, right, community.
Okay.
And so, right, I wanted to reach out to those people that I knew that, that loved working with me and say, and you have to be very, I had to be very careful because you can't really ask people when you're at a firm, you can't ask people if they, would come. You have to really be, the code of professional responsibility requires you to do certain things, which of course I followed. But did speak to clients about, how they would feel if I had my own firm. I also started talking to them about what worked and what didn't work for them, what they liked and what they didn't like, right? I started really listening to them about what it is that they wanted. And, when I thought, can I do this? Can I give this to them? So I do think, I do think doing homework. I mean, depending on whatever kind of business that you're going to start, that it's always helpful to know that you have your first customer there. I also was lucky that when I said that I was leaving, the associate that was working with me, Will Way, my business partner, said, I'm coming with you. I was like,
that's good.
I don't have any, I can't pay you. I can't, and he's like, no, he goes, you're an amazing mentor, and I don't want to be without you. And if you jump, I'm jumping. And so that made it easier. It definitely made it easier. And then, I also talked to other attorneys that I had been working with to see if they would also be interested in coming. Yeah.
So yeah. That is interesting, and I think about when you started 3 years ago, pre-COVID. What was the impact for you over the past year as a business owner and an attorney? During the past year of COVID.
So, like everybody else, I mean, there was immediate terror, fear. What's going to happen. One of the I guess the benefits that I had was that the space that I was renting, I was able to get out of that space, negotiate myself out of the space, and then take over a one-bedroom apartment that we had and use it as as an office space. So that I didn't have to be, in working from home. So that was really great. I was able to kind of move into, a residential space that I could use. So that was great. I mean, that was really great. But also, I think as lawyers, I at least, found that I was actually busier than I had ever been. But in the beginning, it really was doing a lot of pro bono work, right? It really was just helping a lot of people that were calling and wanting to know about, PPP loans or, what do we do? Can we, negotiate out of our lease? What type of clauses are in there? Can we be evicted? What could happen? So I found that I was doing a lot more pro bono work. But just in general, we were busier. I don't know why that was. I think there were all sorts of people were shifting. They were trying to get into other lines of business that could help support the global economy at this time. So I also found myself getting calls from people that wanted to bring PPP into the United States. And how do they do that? And can we help hospitals and frontline workers and different things like that? So it was a really interesting time. I was grateful during that time that I had the ability to use my tools, my profession. To make a difference with a lot of people who were going through a lot of stuff.
That's really good because, as I know, you are a big advocate of the living beyond belief. You could talk about living beyond belief and where that is now. And I know you're involved in the LGBT community with. So when you said pro bono, it just felt like, yes, that's what you would be doing, right?
Yes.
Being of service, right? I wanted to we could talk about Living Beyond Belief and we can talk about your other organizations. I want to just shift a little bit to talk first about your spiritual journey. Right? Talking about from the perspective of, I know that you're Jewish, right? And you were married to a Christian, right? So it was like, an what we call interspiritual, interfaith marriage, right? And so can you talk about like your upbringing in Judaism and then where you are now?
Yeah. So I think culturally I'm Jewish.
Oh, okay, cool.
Um, Culturally, right? So Jewish for me is not so much about religion because I'm not a religious person.
Mhm.
Although I do. Today is actually my brother's birthday. He would have been,
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
he would have been 41 today. He was 28 when we lost him.
Mhm.
And so there is one day that I do go to synagogue is on the highest holy Jewish holiday, Yom Kippur.
Mhm.
But again, it's more of a ritual. I go. It's the one Jewish holiday where we remember the dead, where
Mm.
we take time to think about the repent for your sins, although I don't really believe in that, but to really think about how I could be a better person,
Mhm.
and so that is the one day that I go, and I used to go really more for I would go with my mom, and it really gave her comfort. But I did do love going. I go to the LGBT um, uh, temple that has services generally at the Javits Center for the High Holy Days. But other than that, I'm not a religious person. I actually think that religion separates people.
Mhm.
I don't certainly don't believe that I'm the chosen one, as a lot of Jewish people feel. And no offense to anybody that's Jewish, because it's just that I feel that religion in general tends to separate people, and
Mhm.
it's like I'm different than you versus I'm
Mhm.
the same as you.
Mhm.
But I am a very spiritual person,
Mhm.
and I've had some incredible you know life-changing experiences, in terms of spirituality.
Okay. Mhm.
But yeah, I wouldn't say that I'm the most religious person.
Right. Yeah. And it's really not about religion because I feel that all religions have their ways. In Christianity, if you don't believe in Jesus Christ, that's no good, right? In all the religions they have, and they feel like they are the chosen special one. And it is it's not inclusive. I love Buddhism and those
I do
religions
too.
that are inclusive, the ones where and I can appreciate all religions. And I love parts of Christianity. I can sit here and we can debate about what I like about Christianity and what I don't like about Christianity. But for me, it's all about the spiritual practices
Right.
based on all the different spiritual experiences, religions, and the things that we've done. What spiritual practices have we gained from that? And I just dawned on me. I remember when we went to Memphis, right? And we went to the Christian church, right? You remember this day?
Are you kidding me? I had an unbelievable time. I was testifying. I was singing. I was testifying. It was
You
great.
were like, I remember you said, "Are these people having out of body experiences?"
Experiences.
Right? I
Right.
was like, "Oh no, it's just shouting." And you were like, "Oh, okay, right." But it was just, I had never thought about it like that. So that's why I remember, you saying that. But it was a different Sunday morning spiritual experience. So I think spirituality is it's like the practices. What do we use? You could go to church, you could be in religion, but when you come out, is there joy in your life,
Right.
right?
Right.
If What happens if something stressful happens in your life? How are you living your life? And I talk about the spiritual tools that can support us, right? no matter what.
Right.
And even during this time when we talk about COVID and everything that's happening with that, what practices do we use? And you, like as an attorney, you said that, it was good for you, right? But during that time, we had to stay sane, right? And what kind of things
Right.
supporting you then becomes practices that I say can be your spiritual practice.
Right. Well, let's be clear. I wouldn't say it was good for me. I mean, first of all, like we lost a lot of people,
Right.
and it hit home personally. My sister.
Well, okay, I'll take
Yeah.
not good for
Yeah.
you because what I always like to look at, like there are a lot of devastating things
Right.
that happen, but then we can also shift and say, okay, we acknowledge
Right.
that all these things happen,
Right.
but if you
But
shift,
so
what came
that's
out of
what
that?
came out of it. So I just want to be clear because I don't want to make light of this time, right?
Right.
But with that said, my mom always says, "From every bad comes good." And I do believe that, right? And so for me, gratitude, right? I really was very present to everything that I have, very present and grateful for all the love around me, the support around me, and even just gratitude for, there were times, I live in New York City, right? So there's just a lot more homelessness that I noticed around. Even the ability to like go downstairs and buy some packaged sandwiches. And as I was like walking around the neighborhood at times and just even giving them out to people, just giving them, and actually stopping for a second. There's a woman on 57th Street and 2nd Avenue that's been sitting there forever that told me, this just deep story of pain and suffering and what she went through. The ability for me to just to connect, and stop and take the time to do that, it's something that I feel like there was a global connectedness, right? That we around the globe, all of us, we're human beings, and we were all suffering, right? All going through this, maybe in different ways and at different levels, right? But it really, for me, right, was very humbling. Yeah, gratitude.
Yeah, that resonates with me a lot too, because as I looked around, I'm in a great place, and I am so grateful. My job just transitioned straight to my house, and I've been able to eat and have food and not worry. I mean, I lost very close people, but then it's still, I'm grateful for how my life was during this past year. But on the other hand, I always look at the sad part of losing people that are close and all the people around.
Right.
So gratitude is a really, really big one. And a gratitude practice is awesome because it's not just because we're grateful right now. It's something that we can continue to do. I think it came up a lot more right now for us. As we looked around and saw what was going on, we became grateful. And I appreciate that you really went out to support people around. Sounds like what you would do, like buy food and give it to them, right? So that was really great. It made a difference because I didn't go out because I was like, oh no, I'm at risk, right? But what I wanted to support small businesses. So wherever I could, I bought, I donated, I really worked to support small businesses during this time to help keep them going as much as I could. So, those were some of the things that I did during this time. sitting in gratitude and being grateful. So gratitude is just the best, right?
Yeah.
People think that spiritual practice, they put religion and spiritual practices together, but not necessarily, right? A spiritual practice is, what do you do to get clarity, to calm down, to find peace? And it could be in many ways. Because I know you said that you were karaoke a performer, right? So that could be a spiritual practice because that brings you joy and that brings you happiness.
Yeah, that's funny that you said that because during this time I was doing the leadership program actually through Momentum, and one of the things that I took on for myself in terms of health and wellness was creating fun videos for myself, fun karaoke videos, and it took a lot to kind of get out of myself and do it, but then when I did, it was fun and it was joyous and it was and it was just for me. It was great. That was, it was really fun to do. Yeah, I mean, I feel like singing and dancing are, just, music it just, again, connects us all. I think it just kind of taps into, this place inside myself, that's, that just can change my whole mood. So I think that's, definitely in terms of, I know it sounds crazy, but a spiritual practice.
Right, singing and dancing.
Singing and dancing.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah, and it's good when you can recognize those things that support you. And that's what it's really about. When I talk about finding joy and living your best life, what different practices do you have? And it's all personal, each one. It's your choice about what it is that will support you in living your best life with grace and ease, right?
Yeah.
So, one of the other topics that I want to talk to you about is this whole racial tension, the new, I'm calling new, the groups that they've set up where inclusion, diversity, inclusion, how is that impacting your work? And as an attorney, what do you see happening now in for Black people, brown people, as a result of the awareness that's being brought about today around the inequalities?
Well, I can just speak for me personally. This has been a very, what's the word that I'm looking for? Almost shameful, right? There's a lot of shame for me around this country, the way that this country has been behaving. It's been going on for, obviously for all of our history, but to see the events that, have transpired over this last year, and to realize, and I do think that Trump, brought to the surface and allowed a lot of this to bubble up. But the hatred, the bigotry, the racism, the anti-Semitism, the misogyny, the homophobia, and even, thinking about the insurgents, right? When they charge those steps, if that was, Black and brown people on those steps, they would not have been treated so respectfully. And I'm ashamed, right? I'm ashamed of that. I don't know what it's like. And Grenetta, you and I have talked about this a long time, right? I don't know. I know what it's like to be a woman. I know what it's like to be, a Jew, or at least some people, but I can, you can't hide the color of your skin.
Right.
And I just, that we are still at this point in our history, um, you know, um, not looking at each other as human beings, and that we're, that this is where we are. I guess for me, I like I said, I just, it's been a difficult time, and I don't know what I could do. I've wanted to say things, I've
Mhm.
wanted to do things, I've wanted to speak about, and speak up.
Mhm.
And I almost feel, and again, as an attorney, feeling like I should say something, I should do something.
Mhm.
But then, as you and I, talked about, I don't even really know what to do or what to say, or, you know, I almost feel, um, frozen. Like I'm not, it's so
Mhm.
overwhelmingly big.
Mhm.
I'm grateful that we had the movement, over this last year that we had.
Mhm.
And I just, hope and pray
Mhm.
that I can use my voice for
Mhm.
change.
Yeah, as I listened to you, what came up for me was, when you say, what can I do? And I feel frozen. That hit me like in a sense of like, wow, how many people are in that situation feeling like, so what can I do? How can I be supportive? And feeling like not knowing what to do. So there could be some way of just figuring out what that might be.
Right.
And you know what I'm saying? And do you do it in your way? Because I know who you are and I know that you are loved. But that sounds really big for me. What is it and how do we get to support people in knowing what it is? What's the next move for that,
Right.
right?
Right.
To know how do you really make a difference? And it really is about joining and standing up and saying, no, this isn't right, right? How do we
That's
make a
that's
difference?
a given, right? To constantly, right? I mean, that to me is a given. It constantly, which I do, right?
Right,
Every
exactly.
chance
But
that I
also, I
get.
think too, also it's about having opportunities made available, right? Looking at these spaces where you don't see Black and brown people, how do we incorporate them into those spaces,
Right.
right? Those are the things that can be done right away. You know what I'm saying? Those aren't the things where you say, like, these biases that we don't know about. No, we see this stuff right in our faces. So here are the places where we could start to make a difference, start, moving Black and brown people into these spaces. And I see some movement in that. Right? 'Cause I was devastated that we're still 400 years later, right? To see all of that, right? And then it really hit me really hard this time. This time, I mean, being through it. But I think the good news was that I acknowledged the hurt. And a
Right.
lot of us need to acknowledge the hurt, right? And sit in that and then say, okay, I've acknowledged that. Then what's next? So because I have so many spiritual practices, I used every last one of them, and I had to because I was so hurt. I had to heal. So many things came up that had to be healed in that moment over this past year. It all just kind of bubbled over. So when I
How do
talk,
you, how do you not, how do you be you, right? Or how do you be Black and brown in this country, okay, and not feel, the hatred. We've talked about that, right? Like how, like how do you, because if I was standing in your shoes,
mhm,
all right, and I'm going to speak really freely right now,
mhm.
right? If I was standing in your shoes, I I feel like I would hate me, right?
Well,
Just when I
no,
look
because
at
you
me,
can't. Like, look
right?
at me. It's not that I don't hold hate. I
No, I
say,
know you
you know,
don't. I'm
no, I'm
looking
saying,
about you in general. I mean, we've been
no, I
friends
mean,
for 30 years, right? But what I'm
got it.
saying is that, I don't, when I look at that, I'm, it's just, it's, I guess maybe, this is how, I don't know, how any group that oppresses another group, how do you, if you're that group of the oppressed, of the
Right,
oppressors,
right.
how do you, when I know that I don't fit in that group, I don't belong in that group, and yet I'm a part of it, how do I,
You
kind of,
move forward. You press
yeah,
on. You press on. You press on. That's what I keep saying. Whatever opportunity is available, you move forward and you bring others and you keep making a difference. And I think that the progress is moving forward.
right,
As far as I went in corporate America, making new strides, right? As far as our kids are going, the things that we're doing, right? You keep moving forward. We can't let it hold us back. So the pain is there. And I think too, the same way you would say, like we say, oh, you just act like it doesn't exist. It's not that we're not acting like it doesn't exist, but it's not wearing it. It's like, okay, this is here. But what other opportunities can come from this? And how can I move forward to create the life that I want? Can't, that's how I see it. And also when I think about the opportunities that are made available, that's where I come from. Because if I tell you every time Black and brown people are given an equal opportunity, we excel. Right?
of course, right? Because you have to work harder, you have to be better, you have to be smarter, right? You have to, I mean, just to get right where
Right, exactly. And so, but we pressed on, right? But we pressed on to make a difference for future generations, for our kids.
right.
And that's how I do. I keep going, right? And also, too, over time, because I have um, a great spiritual practice, and spirituality is such a part of my life.
Right.
And the things that I've learned, I've been able to create the life that I love. And one of the things I talk about is the law of attraction. I understand that how you think, what you believe, all that plays into the life that you create.
Absolutely.
And so, in all the time that I've been working on what are my thoughts? What are my beliefs? How do I shift my thoughts? Where am I flowing energetically? What's coming to me? And looking at all that really has supported me in creating this wonderful, wonderful life that I love right now. And I'd like to share that with others, say, here is, although all this stuff around us is going on, here are some practices, here are some things that can support you, because all we want to do is be happy. Everything we do is to be happy.
Right.
Right.
So it's how, how again, how do you be, whether, again, an oppressed group. And I said, whether it's anybody, right, that's not, a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant male in this country. Okay.
Right, exactly.
Right? And there's many great ones that are out there. So if any of you guys are listening, I'm certainly not, a hater of any one group. But,
right, no, I get it.
but if how, and you're great at this, right? Of as you said, figuring out how to forgive. Forgiveness. You want to talk about a practice, right?
Yeah,
forgive. Not to hate, right? But to forgive and to create that level of forgiveness is very. I think it's very healing, not just for those that you're forgiving, but for yourself. So, I think that's, in terms of a spiritual practice, and just talking about the movement and Black Lives Matter and how do you come to a healing and a forgiveness and still, and still press on and still go forward and do it, in a really, in a positive way. But, what I do know is that, it is incumbent upon me, right, as someone with white privilege, right,
Mm-hmm.
it is incumbent upon me to go the extra mile and do whatever I need to do, right, and whatever that might look like, right, to make
Mm-hmm.
sure that I'm creating a world that's um, that's equal in every sense of the word, and every little bit that I can do.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't have to look like it doesn't have to look like any more than treating each person that I
Mm-hmm.
come into contact with respect and dignity. It can
Right.
be something as small as that.
Hmm. You know what? I know that let's shift to the LGBTQ community, which is a community that I know that you've done a lot of work in, and I know that you're a part of. And talk about the changes that are going on now and what you're seeing happening in that community and how you're supporting that.
I mean, I think today there is, at least with the younger generation, doesn't seem to need to define themselves so much anymore. Like they're fluid, or they think it's, why do you need to, everybody needs to define themselves. But I think the reason, at least, that's important, is because, when you are an oppressed group and you don't have equal rights, right, that it
Mhm,
is
mhm,
imperative that
mm,
you define yourself as a group so that you can come forward and have, a voice, and have, so I definitely think that there's a shift in that way.
okay.
I also think, we're seeing, in terms of the law, where we're seeing some of the biggest shifts, right, is, around transgender rights,
Mhm,
and the way that society is changing around conversations in that space, I think is
mhm,
very, is very positive and very healthy.
mhm,
And so I think it's great to see, role models. There may not be a lot, but more role models, in television, and
mhm.
and in the movies. So I think, definitely a shift in that
But
space.
think back when we Living Beyond Belief started. You could talk about Living Beyond Belief and how think back from Living Beyond Belief to now. Take us on a little journey, right? In the sense of remember when we started Living Beyond
Sure.
Belief and now where we are.
Right. So, Living Beyond Belief was founded in memory of my uncle, Wayne Fisher, who was the first New York City school teacher to publicly disclose that he was HIV positive. And Granetta, was actually at one point in time the executive director. And, at that time, there was no face. To AIDS. There was no reality, TV, and he really, he really put himself out there, and he actually died on television for all of New Yorkers to see, and it really. He was spiritual. I mean, he wasn't, HIV and AIDS was just one part of him. But at that time, they weren't even giving out condoms, in schools, and the conversation around that. And I mean, it was just a completely, different time. And at that time we were doing, we started the organization to do HIV/AIDS peer education in the New York City public schools, and we were giving college grants in New York City public high school students doing AIDS-related work. And so since then, I mean, just again in the LGBT community, I mean, there's just, I'm going. That was 1997. From 1997 to now, I mean, there's just, no. I really think no comparison. I mean,
Mhm.
the changes and that have gone on in the community. in terms of all sorts of, civil rights, obviously including gay marriage. It's just been tremendous. So I, certainly see a huge change from that period of time. Today, Living Beyond Belief is actually being reborn, if you will. I was getting ready to actually dissolve the organization, just because the Hetrick Martin Institute, which runs the Harvey Milk School in the city, was really took over the organization and the activities that we were engaged in. And I was getting ready to dissolve it when actually I got approached during COVID by one of my clients, Wyman Jew, who wanted to, get PPE into the country, and said, can we use your nonprofit and partner, with a bunch of different activist organizations to help to, purchase masks and other PPE, and so I just was amazing that I had not dissolved it. So we started to kind of reignite, and now really what we're doing is I have a large firm that on a nonprofit on a pro bono basis is helping to expand the mission to allow us to raise money for all sorts of initiatives. So basically, Living Beyond Belief will now become a platform for anybody that wants to make a difference with a cause that they care about. So if you can come in, you come in and you feel like you want to raise money, for a New York City, HIV/AIDS project, you can. If you want to do it for cancer, you can. Domestic violence, you can. Whatever you feel that matters to you. That is really, the organization is really looking to be a platform just to make a difference, with socioeconomic, human rights, whatever it might be that resonates.
Oh, wow. That's really good. That's really good that to see that it's still there and that it is now open to support other causes and missions. I like the expansion of that because it was just really great having Living Beyond Belief, right, as a part of my experience, right? One of the things I know about you is also that you are a connector, right? You know what I'm saying? Like you're not a million people, right? Can you talk about some of the other projects that you're working on now? I know you work with the Affinity Project, right? As a part of that.
Sure. I mean, so really, in terms of just kind of the work that I do, I mean, Anne Marie Principe, owns the Affinity Project, and it's just one of the strategic alliances that we have. So actually, they are doing a new campaign called Feed the Monster. It's an environmental campaign that's collecting inkjet cartridges. And so, what a lot of people don't know is that, you could go to Staples and bring back your inkjet cartridges, but what Staples does is they actually melt them down. They don't allow them to be refilled. They don't want the competition. And so, it's really much better for the environment to reuse them. And so, I'm working with Anne Marie's company and one of my clients called Cartridge Evolution to really support young kids, and it's called Feed the Monster, and they literally have these adorable bins in New Jersey. They've started all like around Jersey City and Hoboken and Cliffside, and where kids can come and bring back their inkjet cartridges, And they have different programs now that where kids can get money for schools. You can raise money for charities, actually local synagogues, churches. This is a great way. It's a win-win-win for everybody. Where the Cartridge Evolution will give you a bin, and they'll actually pay you top dollar for every inkjet cartridge that you collect. So it's a great way to make a difference with the environment. It's a great way to teach young kids, right, about the environment, but it's also a great way for communities to raise money for causes that they love. So I'm very excited about this program. So if anybody is interested in raising money for any of the community-based organizations or for their church or mosque or synagogue or whatever it might be, or schools, you can go to Cartridge Evolution. If you just Google Cartridge Evolution, there's a landing page that would allow you to partner with them, and so very cool. So that's just one of the my recent projects that I'm doing with Anne Marie Principe at Affinity Projects through Cartridge Evolution. But I'm definitely a connector. I just, it's who I am, right? So it was always like when somebody needed something and they didn't know how to get it, or they'd run out of all, ways of getting it, they'd be like, oh, let's call Barry. Right? Maybe he could help us. And so, so that's just one thing. And then, expanding Living Beyond Belief right now, and in the process of doing that. I think just always fundraising, always thinking about, fundraising and who I can support, and, different events that are coming up. Always thinking about how I can put people together.
Yeah, I was just thinking about, because being a connector is a skill, right? Because it requires just being connected with a lot of different people and remembering, oh, well, let me hook this person up with that one and this one with that one. And I do know that about you. Whenever I think of anything, I'm like, well, let me check in with Barry and see who she knows, right? But I also like the fact that when you started to talk about the environment and working with, because one of the things I found myself interested in is climate change. So whenever someone brings that up, right, I'm like, okay, so here's another thing. You know how I know it's there, but I haven't really stepped out to do anything with it or about it. So I'm excited to hear that you have that project with the Affinity Group, just supporting, just making a difference in the way we use products that support the environment. And so that's really cool to hear that.
It's a win-win, not only just for charities, but look, I've had, single moms that have, wanted to raise some extra money, anybody can do it, right? If you have any kind of network of folks that that are using inkjet cartridges, all you have to do is start to tell people about it, and the company Cartridge Evolution will purchase those inkjet cartridges from you. So there's I started actually talking to one woman in the UK who actually expanded this program to major corporate venues where she got them to put bins down, and she's collecting hundreds of thousands of inkjet cartridges, and ended up making a significant amount of revenue. So that's why I really loved the program, because I just felt, like I said, I felt like it was just a triple win. It was great for the environment. It was a great way to teach young people about community and responsibility, and it was a great way to raise money for causes or people that wanted to make a little bit extra on the side. So,
Oh.
yeah.
Well, we're getting close to close, but I want to circle back around. And we talked a lot. So, what would be your top three spiritual practices that you would say fit you and will be in your own personal spiritual toolkit?
Um, Definitely, I think the three things that I said. I think, love,
Mm-hmm.
gratitude, and
Mm-hmm.
forgiveness.
Mm,
So really, like the love, that has to start with myself, which, is always as we all, right? Or, I think it's a journey,
mhm,
to have grace,
mhm,
with myself and give myself love and space and, and the same, with others around me, and always trying to come from a loving place and to
mhm,
treat, and this is the one thing that is true about, I think, almost every religion,
mhm,
is to treat other people the way you want to be treated.
mhm.
And I think you'll actually read that tenet, and you're an interfaith minister, so
Right. Oh,
I
there.
think
Yeah.
that's something that
Yeah.
I think that's really, that's for me, it's a great way to always remember, how am I being, right?
Mm-hmm.
Am I being in a way that I want people to be with me?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
know, and
Even to
so,
create it. Yeah.
yeah. Um, again, I mean, I think for me, again, every day waking up, and even if it's the smallest things, you turn on the hot water,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, wow, hot water is coming
Yeah.
out. I know
Yeah.
it seems like, a small thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
I can see, I can hear, I can dance.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's the little things
Mm-hmm.
to me. It's really the little things. I don't need a lot to make me happy.
Mm-hmm.
I really find that if I focus on on the things that I have, and then if I'm not, to get out of myself, right? So then to go out and to make a difference, to give food to somebody, to go out and help, to connect somebody, right? To when I'm starting to feel down, um, to give of myself, and grateful for the things that I have. And then, like I said, forgiveness.
Yeah.
Today is, like I said, my brother would have been 49. He was
Nice.
murdered in his own home.
Mm-hmm.
And the ability to forgive the young boys that killed him.
Mm-hmm.
And, I remember sitting in the trial and seeing their families there, and how they broke the lives of their loved ones, their mothers. They had mothers, they had wives, they had children.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really hard for my parents to hear when I said, not that New York has the death penalty, but I don't believe in the death penalty.
Right.
And
Right.
I didn't believe in it in that situation. And the ability to find a place of forgiveness,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
it's not easy.
No, I know.
It's not easy. And
So yeah, I think that I
yeah,
love all three of those. Those are really, really, really powerful tools to have in your toolkit. I am so excited that you joined me tonight for Conversations with Reverend G. It's been a great, great pleasure having you here, and it's been really good.
I just really have to acknowledge you. I know we have 1 minute left, but for those people that, I mean, you have been a constant source in my life of just love and commitment. You are, an amazing human being that's made such a difference in the world. And I'm so grateful that there are people out there that get to listen to the conversations with Reverend G. You're really phenomenal person, and you make such a difference in this world, and you've made such a difference in my life, and I'm so grateful and honored to be in your presence.
Thank
Thank
you
you
so much.
so much for
Yeah,
having me.
thank you for
I
coming.
love you.
Love you too. Well, thank you everyone for joining me here tonight in Conversations with Reverend G. And you can find me here every Monday night from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. right here on WEMS Radio. You can also find me on Facebook and YouTube as Reverend Grenetta Mason and on Instagram as Rev Grenetta. Today, I'd like to leave you with those three things that I found so very important to add to your spiritual toolkit: love, gratitude, and forgiveness. I'd like to thank you for joining me, and I will see you all again next week right here. Conversations with Reverend G on WEMS Radio. Have a great week.